Wait, what about weird?
Hello, I'm Elena.
And I'm Echo.
And this is our podcast, What About Weird?
A podcast about all things weird, from cryptids and aliens to strange science and unhinged history.
Today I am going to be talking about the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. Do you know anything about it?
A little bit.
Other than goblins.
I know that there are goblins. I don't think they're green, though. Aren't they silver? They're little silver.
They are, yes.
Guys?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we're going to get into that. And I'm going to talk more about it later, but they're called the Kelly Green Men or the Kelly Goblins because they were described as being like goblins, and they were called green because the press thought that little green men sounded better than little silver men. And there's already some sort of some little bit of precedent for, spacemen being green.
They couldn't have done little gray men. That's basically silver.
Yeah, I think it was also a play on the color name Kelly Green.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to get into that later.
I understand. We do love a pun.
Love a good pun. Love it. So let's go ahead and get right into it. 8 people came bursting into the police department in a small town in southwestern Kentucky on the night of August 21st, 1955. One of the people yelled, "We need help! We've been fighting them for hours." And they weren't fighting other Kentuckians. According to the people, it was silver men. Silver men had landed on their property and terrified the ever-living shit out of them.
I didn't know that they were called Kentuckians until just now.
Aren't they called Kentuckians? What would you call them?
I don't know. I'd never thought about it before.
Kentuckians?
I don't know anyone from Kentucky.
I do.
Fried chickens.
Fried chickens?
They're from Kentucky.
I think this was pre-KFC, but I don't know.
Well, now I want to know when KFC was founded. What year was this?
55.
Okay. Surely KFC has been around since 55.
Okay, we're gonna Google it.
And we're already off topic.
52, so it's not pre.
Wow.
So they are fried chickens.
They are fried chickens.
They are fried chickens. Okay, so they weren't fighting fried chickens. Billy Ray Taylor was visiting his friend Elmer, also known as Lucky, Sutton, at his farmhouse just outside of Kelly, Kentucky, in August of 55. Taylor went outside to collect some water, then something caught his eye as it went streaking overhead. It was really bright with an exhaust that was all colors of the rainbow, Taylor said. Freaked out, he ran back inside and told his wife and the Sutton family that he said he had just seen a flying saucer. There was a hissing noise as the object landed, Taylor said. It was landing somewhere behind the farmhouse. No one believed him, naturally, until the dog started barking, and that's when people realized there's definitely something out there. They didn't know if it was a UFO or not, but there was something out there.
So they just thought he was a pathological liar.
I guess.
Gosh darn.
I read a number of places that he was a carnival worker, so...
Oh, so just because he was a carny, they were like, we don't trust you.
Well, Billy Ray and Lucky Sutton were both carnival workers, so they didn't know who to believe.
Okay.
I don't know if the occupation makes any difference, though. So the terrified families described what they saw to the police and said that they had oversized heads, large, round, oversized heads with pointed ears and long arms that almost touched the ground that ended in talons. And everything about them seemed to shimmer and glow, almost as if they were made of metal. The family described their eyes as having a yellowish light. So back to the farmhouse. They're looking outside, the family's looking outside, and they start seeing these little silver creatures coming out of the woods towards them. And the family is like, we're not having any of this. But being true Americans, they decided, we're not going down without a fight. I don't know what this is, but we're not having any of it.
Right.
So they all grabbed their guns, waiting and hoping that they're not going to get any closer. But they did, and one of the creatures pressed its face up against the window, and that's when all hell broke loose. They started firing, shooting at these things, and over the next few hours, Billy Ray and Lucky were the ones doing most of the shooting, and they're shooting at these things for hours.
They don't even know if these things are hostile yet. They've just seen them and decide we're going to start shooting because they're on our property.
I mean, yeah, but that's America for you.
Yeah.
You act like you've never been shot at by going on the wrong person's property.
Oh, no.
Welcome to the South, my friend. And considering they don't know what these things are, they're just coming up to them, but they're shooting at them, and they claim to have hit them several times. They said they heard the bullets pinging off of them, like they're hitting, like they're shooting metal buckets, is how they described it, but didn't seem to do anything to them. And at one point, the little men flipped up into the trees and sort of disappeared up into the trees. So they're shooting at them, and they kind of do a backflip up into the trees.
Jeez. If you're made out of metal, you gotta have some, like, crazy legs to backflip into some trees. Like,
I guess. Unless they're just painted silver.
Yeah, but then the bullets were clanging off of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seemed like they would be hefty little guys.
It's a mystery. So Taylor poked his head out to see where they'd gotten off to, and when he did, a taloned hand reached down from the awning and felt his hair, and freaked out, he quickly dodged back inside, and they're all hiding inside with their guns, waiting for these things to go away. And when it finally starts to quiet down, the whole family piles into one of the cars and zooms off to the police department, because they don't know what this is. Basically, invaders on their property.
At least they all decided to go together, because I know
a
lot of people are like, we'll split up, and some of us will stay here and some will go to the police station, and that's always just the worst option.
Yeah. Rule number 1 of horror movies, don't split the group.
Yeah. Do not split up.
So when they got there, the police described them as very shaken, and they knew the Sutton family, and they knew they weren't the type of people to go running to the police for anything, so something must have really freaked them out. These are rural Kentuckians. They're far away from the police unless they absolutely have to. They're not going to go to the cops. And like I said, the cops are like, these people are very shaken.
Mm-hmm. And it's a whole family that's coming to you.
It's 2 whole families.
2 of them.
2 families.
Because they were at the cabin together.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the Sutton family and the Taylor family.
Okay.
The Taylor family was visiting the Suttons. So 4 officers, including the chief of police, headed out to the farmhouse. They didn't see any silver men or UFOs, but they did find bullet casings all over the place, so the families were definitely shooting at something. So there's evidence that they weren't just running to the police and being like, "Oh, there's a UFO, there's a UFO." They were shooting at something.
Mm-hmm.
A few hours after the officers left, since they didn't find anything, they're like, "Let us know if you see anything else." There's not much else we can do, so they headed home. Or they headed back to the station. After a few hours, Glennie Langford, the mother of the Sutton family, she had a different last name because she had remarried. She was woken up around 3 a.m. by something shiny standing at her window. It was pressing its hands up against her window again. Naturally, as one does when something's looking in your window, she screamed. And her sons heard her screaming and came running with their guns to go and shoot at it.
Right.
I could not find if they actually did shoot at it or not this time.
But they at least grabbed their guns.
They grabbed their guns and they ran in. After there wasn't much else from the Sutton family after this night in regards to goblins. They very much kept, after this, they kind of kept their mouth shut. Like, I don't know what this is. It freaked us out. But if it wasn't men from outer space, what was it?
Right. And they probably thought it was a one-time occurrence. Like, this was something really scary that happened to us, but it's over now. We got through it.
We don't talk about this.
Right.
So almost right away, people began to question the story and doubted the honesty of the Suttons, and a lot of the neighbors just dismissed the whole thing as a drunken debacle resulting from too much moonshine. The mother of the family, Glennie Langford, was very upset about this because she was a teetotalitarian and said they were telling lies about us. They were making stuff up, saying we were drinking, and she wasn't the type of person to allow any sort of alcohol. They said we were drinking, but she knew what she saw. She said that the aliens looked like 5-gallon gasoline cans with heads on top and small legs, and they were all shimmering like bright metal on a refrigerator.
Isn't there a crazy drawing of
Yes.
this? Oh,
There's
this
your
is
little
so
drawing.
cool.
I'll try and remember to put this up on the Instagram.
Yeah.
But you can see how they're described as goblins, right?
Yeah, that does look like a goblin.
Let's talk about that whole alcohol thing there for a second. So they drove to the police station. So at least one person had to have been sober,
was
else the
sober.
police would have mentioned that. And the police said that they didn't smell any alcohol on the people. They seemed 100% sober.
Right.
So it probably wasn't alcohol, but that, we don't know for sure, but it probably wasn't. So what else could it be? Some people are saying it could be misidentified great horned owls with their pointy little horns looking like eyes, because it's always owls.
I feel like a lot of these things get misattributed to owls, but I'm sorry.
Owl slander.
I know
I won't be holding
a bird when I see one. I'm not going to look at an owl and think it's like a goblin space alien that I'm going to shoot out at. I just don't see how that...
I could understand misidentifying it at first of, it's a silhouette with pointy little horns and their eye reflection looks sort of yellow.
And they're probably a silvery color. They have the talons.
Yeah, but once it gets closer, you're like, oh, that's an owl.
If you've been shooting at these things
for
they're
like 4 hours,
their face up against the glass, how is that an owl?
Yeah. So it's owl slander. I'm telling you, all these things, owl slander.
Yeah.
So another thing people have suggested is that it was monkeys from the circus that Taylor and Sutton worked at.
Escaped monkeys, or they intentionally planted the monkeys?
It sounds like it was intentionally planted, but I wasn't sure. But it was also said that they were silver painted escaped circus monkeys. Because the two guys
would have found that later, though, right?
Yeah, someone would have found that later. You would have found a body. I'm not a monkey biologist, but I don't think they're bulletproof.
Yeah, if you shoot a monkey,
they kind of die.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. I've never shot a monkey. Let's test that theory.
How about we don't?
No, let's do it for science.
For science.
For science, we have to shoot this monkey.
Because we don't already know that monkeys are, if they're bulletproof or not. How would we know that?
Ma'am, please get out of the zoo. So another theory people have brought forth is that one of the children was having a laugh and throwing cats against the screen windows, and it was making this terrible screeching noise when she'd pull it off, which you would think if someone's you would first off identify it as a cat pretty quick.
Yeah.
And as soon as someone let off a shot, you'd be like, hey, no, it's me, Dad, it's me. I'm the one throwing the cats against the window. It's not spacemen.
Yeah, because, I don't know, that theory just doesn't make any sense to me. I could understand the monkeys and the owls, but that one is...
Oh, because silver monkeys make so much sense to you?
I mean...
Silver-painted monkeys roaming around rural Kentucky makes perfect sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, but if they were looking to create some sort of hoax, it would be, but...
I know what you mean. I'm just
I don't think an entire 2 families of people would do that, though, because the other family wouldn't have been in on it, and I don't know why you'd want your monkeys to get shot.
Maybe it's just some really weird people on the way to a sci-fi convention that broke down. So UFO enthusiasts came to the farm as soon as this news got out. Mm-hmm. They're running all around the farm, trampling all over everything. And the Suttons were getting pretty upset about this, but they decided, well, if they're going to come anyway, let's just charge them. You're coming here anyway, give us money. Unfortunately for them, doing that made people question it even more of, were you just doing this for money this whole time?
Money. Yeah.
Which I can understand that. They weren't happy about this news getting out. Like I said, they didn't talk about this. But I can understand that as soon as someone starts charging money, you're like, oh, this is all for profit.
Yeah, I do understand that view, but also I wouldn't want people on my property, and if people were going to be constantly harassing me to see my property because I supposedly had like a UFO sighting and some extraterrestrials on my land.
Shoot at them too.
I would want to charge them money because I don't want people on my property looking around and like trampling.
Charge them money,
stuff.
Shoot at them, either one. They've already proved they'll shoot at something just right off the bat, so...
Yeah, really, you better watch out, UFO enthusiasts.
Yeah. Don't come wearing silver, you're doomed. But with all of this, people started really shunning the Sutton family, and they were, making fun of them for being the crazy UFO family and stuff. And it got so bad to the point where, like, shortly after, they sold the farm and moved.
Oh, no.
And I don't think I couldn't find if the farmhouse was still there, but I don't think it is. They probably tore it down.
That's sad. And so this was their only encounter with these? Like, this happened, and then there were no other sightings in the area? Nothing. Like, it was just one and done.
As far as I can find, I did hear an interview with the daughter of Lucky Sutton from a few years ago, and she wasn't born at the time, but she had said that they didn't talk about this in the family. She didn't even know until someone tracked them down to talk to them about this and came up to her and was like, hey, is your dad home? I want to talk about the green men. And she was like, what are you talking about? She had said that knowing her family, if this happened again, they wouldn't have talked about it if it did happen again.
Wow. So it's like almost shameful for them then. Like,
well, they got bullied out of town.
Yeah, they were scared.
They got called drunkard. There were a bunch of teetotalers and they got called drunkards.
Wow.
Like, of course they moved out of town and wouldn't want to talk about this.
That just and I feel like that's a common theme in a lot of these stories is every single time somebody shares their experience, people are like, that's a bunch of BS. We don't believe you. Like, you suck. We hate you. You're doing this for fame and money.
Yeah.
And then they eventually, end up moving. Obviously, there are hoaxes. There are people that do want, fame and money.
Yeah, and there's people that manage to get that.
Yeah, but for the most part, I feel like if you're just somebody living out in rural Kentucky with your family and you see something like this, it's not some elaborate hoax. You probably actually saw something that scared the shit out of you. Whether it was owls or not, you saw something that scared the shit out of you and you got the police involved.
Yeah, something happened. Yeah. Was it actually Silvermen?
Yeah.
We don't know. We weren't there. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But something happened and they were all scared enough to go to the police. And I have this written later in my research, but, this is mid-1950s, rural Kentucky. These people probably didn't have a TV, probably weren't going to the movies much because it's a poor area. So they weren't exposed to, UFO movies and stuff were a thing.
Yeah.
Sci-fi movies have been a thing, but they probably weren't exposed to it, so it probably wasn't on the forefront of their mind of, we can make money from flying saucers. Maybe it was. Maybe they knew stuff about this. But they probably weren't exposed to it on the level that we are now. Definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
Because TVs were still new at this time. So you asked earlier about where calling them green men came from, and like I had said, it's because little green men sound better than little gray men or little silver men. It was also a play on the Kelly Green. Yeah, so the Evansville Courier, a newspaper across the way, had sort of taken liberties with this, and they're they coined that phrase.
Yeah.
And it really took off. This is kind of the reason why not the reason, but the main reason why we think of space aliens as little green men. This wasn't the first time that aliens or people from outer space were called little green men.
Yeah.
In the 12th century, there's a story about the green children of Woolpit, which I want to do an episode on because that's super interesting.
I've never heard of that one.
I want to do that so bad. It's very interesting. But basically, 12th century, small green children in Woolpit in England, found in that area.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know very many England cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Americans, we don't hear about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of cases, but we just don't know about. We don't know where to look for them. We don't, there's the Rendlesham Forest incident, and there's a number of other UFO incidents, but as Americans, we think of the American incidents.
Yeah.
So another case of people describing quote unquote men from Mars as green was the author Edgar Rice Burroughs had described in a fictional book, had described men from Mars as being pea green. And so that was, I think, in the 19th century. So this wasn't a new thing.
Yeah.
But it took off with this.
But that also kind of says to the point where if they were getting this idea from some sort of media, they probably would have said that they were little green men, but instead they reported seeing like metallic silver men.
Yeah.
That like bullets clanged off of.
Yeah.
So either these people are really creative or they really did have some crazy experience.
Yeah. Or they were actually secretly drinking, which they said they weren't, on some really wicked moonshine that was infused with LSD.
Either that or they had, what's that plant? The datura plant or whatever, that if it grows near your house, I think if you like inhale it or it can get in your well water, it causes like psychosis and it can happen to an entire family.
I don't know about that, but they were getting water from a well.
Interesting.
Because the guy was going, when he first saw the UFO, he, like the aliens and stuff, he went outside, he was going outside.
Yeah.
And get water from the well.
Okay.
To refill their water jug.
Huh. Yeah, so the datura plant is this highly poisonous kind of flower. It looks like, those flowers, I don't remember what they're called, but you see them in like the baskets at the Home Depot. They look like little trumpets or whatever, and their petals are like super duper soft.
Let me look this up. What are you talking about?
The datura plant.
How the fuck do you spell that?
Datura.
Oh, morning glories.
Yeah, that's the name for those. I love that I know the name of the highly toxic plant that's related to nightshade, but not the plant that it looks like that's perfectly acceptable and safe. But
morning glories are a hallucinogen.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Maybe they're part of the same family then.
Probably. Yeah, no, these look just like morning glories.
But yeah, like...
and morning glories would grow in Kentucky.
Yeah, it can cause delirium and hallucinations, and it's been known, like, there have been, cases of people, like, quite literally going insane and seeing super crazy shit because they had this plant that was seeping into the water that they were drinking, and it's straight up happened to, like, entire families of people before, and then they move and nothing ever happens again. But if that was the case, you would think that they would be having these crazy hallucinations for more than just this one time. Like, why would it have happened just this one time and never have happened again, right?
Yeah, it grows in Kentucky. It looks like it grows in Kentucky, from what I can find. Huh. I'm surprised I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Plants are, like, my thing.
We should totally do an episode on it one time and just do different cases where, like, datura plants have messed with people.
Or different hallucinogens, like, naturally occurring.
Yeah.
That
that's a great idea.
Are accidentally ingested.
Yeah.
That would be interesting, yeah. I have more to my story here.
Ooh, okay.
A little bit more. A lot of people just cut the story here. Mm-hmm. But I heard a story that I think is very, very similar. Mm-hmm. Not very similar, but there's some things that overlap. So the exact same night, across the river in Evansville. Remember, I'd mentioned Evansville earlier.
Yeah.
With the newspaper writing about it.
Mm-hmm.
There were two women swimming in the Ohio River, and because it was a hot night, they're going for a swim, and when suddenly one of them gets pulled, grabs one of them and pulls him underwater, and she's fighting and fighting and fighting.
Oh shit.
And she manages to kick away from it. She's kicking and kicking, and she gets back to shore on a nearby floaty that she was using. And when she got out of the water, there's a handprint that looked like it had 3 claws on it, a large handprint, and there were greenish stains. They called the police for this as well, and the marks stayed on her leg for several days. Some people think this is something totally different. Mm-hmm. It might be, but the taloned hands, she didn't see this thing at all.
Yeah, but this was on the same night.
It was the same night, just across the river.
In the same area.
Yeah, just across the river, which I think is interesting. I thought it was just something worth mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely, because it could be related.
But do take this with a grain of salt, because both of these were published in the same newspaper. I mean, a number of other newspapers published these as well, but like everybody published the Kelly Hopkinsville thing. I could only really find the original source for this in the Evansville Courier. There might be more sources out there for this second thing. So, take that with a grain of salt. But right. I did think it was worth mentioning the taloned hands. The same night, it was only a few hours later from all of this. So I did think that was worth mentioning. So was all of this extraterrestrials? Is this some sort of cryptid? Some people classify these as a cryptid. And the only reason they classify it as a UFO is because of the supposed craft that was seen at the very beginning. Was it a whole bunch of spooked Kentuckians misidentifying, painted monkeys? I don't know. I don't know what you think about this, but I do want to mention that J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book, you know who he is, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, he thought there was definitely something to this, and he thought it was a very reliable case, given that there's so many people seeing this. But Project Blue Book never fully investigated it too well, so, take that with a grain of salt as well.
Do you want to explain Project Blue Book a little bit?
Yeah, I probably should. So I want to do a whole episode on Project Blue Book, but in short, Project Blue Book was in the 1940s and 50s, I think some into the 60s, was the government UFO research project. So many people were reporting UFOs and stuff. They're like, let's just send someone out there to look at this. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe it's an issue. Maybe this is a safety concern, a public safety concern, or something like that. And J. Allen Hynek I believe he was an astronomer that was the head of Project Blue Book.
Right. Because it was like a subset of the Air Force, right? Was Project Blue Book?
Yeah. And Hynek later left Project Blue Book because he was... There's a lot of stuff he described, and a lot of people got upset with him as describing stuff as like swamp gas, and he got fed up with having to describe stuff that way, so he left Blue Book later on, towards the end of it. Yeah. And some people think that this whole thing might be related to the giant cave system underlying Kentucky.
Ooh.
So some people think they might have gone in there, they might have come from there. Maybe there's something with that.
There were some crazy cave creatures, huh?
Crazy cave creatures. Mammoth Caves, that big cave system is super haunted.
Yeah, because how do we know what's even down there?
Maybe they're ghosts. Yeah. I saw some statistic when I went to Mammoth Caves about, like, it was only, like, they suspect only, like, 40% of it is... I'm pulling this number out my ass, but it was, like, 40% has been explored, or maybe they gave, like, a certain number of miles.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, some people think there's something to that as well.
Crazy.
So, what do you think of all of this? I've given you my story. I've kind of stumbled through it a bit, but what do you think of all this? Goblins, not goblins?
I definitely don't think they were trying to hoax it. I don't know if I'm like, this is, especially since there's been like really nothing else kind of related to it in the area. I don't know if it's straight up these were aliens that came down to Earth and visited these people. I'm sure there were like similar stories of it, but...
So I think I haven't looked into it, but I've heard some stuff about sometime in like the mid 2010s. Some people think they came back because there's some different stories there and stuff. I haven't looked into that.
Because it could have been like, you know, like the whole truck stop theory is like the aliens came down this one time, they got shot at, and they were like, all right, fuck this, I'm out.
Okay, avoid that town. They'll shoot at you.
They're like, okay, so never mind. Goodbye, Americans. We are not your friend. So there's always, you know, that's why it was a one-time incident. But I definitely don't think that it was like these two families going to the police for no reason, unless it was something like they ingested something that caused some crazy mass hallucination. But
I do think that's very possible. I do sometimes get pissed off at the fact that, you know, half the time if people are trying to explain these without going a roundabout way of, it was cats being thrown at the window over and over again. Like, if someone's not trying to go long ways, I kind of get I feel like half these things are explained by mass hallucination, mass psychogenesis.
Yeah.
And would it all be, if they were hallucinating, would it all be the same hallucination? Or would it be like different things? Or would it be one person starts seeing something and one person is like, oh my God, there's goblins, and someone is like, oh shit, you're right, that does kind of look like goblins.
The power of suggestion is really strong when people are on hallucinogens, because you could be on a hallucinogen, and if somebody says something to you, like, wow, look at that, there's some silver goblin out there.
Their trees.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're probably going to see goblins in the trees, because when you're in that sort of hallucinogenic state, it is like the power of suggestion is really, really strong. And it could be that like all those people are seeing that. But at the same time, like, how would they have ingested this hallucinogen? How would they have ingested it? Because if it was a datura plant, then they would have been experiencing other symptoms for a period of time. Yeah, and this was like a one-time event. So I don't think that that's what happened. I don't think that they were drinking. I don't think it was a mass hallucination. Like, it's, you know, I brought it up just because it could be one more theory, but I think even if it was, I don't know, misidentification of the owls or whatever, they definitely still saw something that was what they described that scared the shit out of them. They had a gunfight with it, and then they went to the police.
The owls are shooting back!
And as far as I'm concerned, though, none of the theories that we've come up with make, you know, a whole lot of concrete sense to me. Like, I wouldn't specifically say, oh, well, that was definitely what that was.
Yeah. It was 100% owls dressed as goblins shooting guns at them and painting monkeys silver and throwing them at the window.
Exactly.
It's all of the above. And the monkeys were on moonshine. We're drinking moonshine. So yeah, that's all I have for the Hopkinsville Green Men.
Always remember
to ask about the weird.
Bye for now.